Welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positive Doctor Who commentary in which I, Toby Hadoke, and a special guest try to mine a particular episode of Doctor Who for all of its positives.
Hello, I'm Darrell Maclaine. I'm a voice actor, impressionist, composer and clown-stroke daft bugger. My favourite Doctor Who story is The Chase from 1965.
Well, never mind the dead planet, or the mysterious planet, or the devil's planet. We're on a planet, and we've got a decision to make, and that's whether to watch episode 6 of The Chase. And I've decided, and the answer is yes. And so I hope you've decided too, because I'm going to press play in 3, 2, 1, now. So I pressed play, I pressed enter, because I was on episode selection. So it could have called it Planet of the Garbage Cones, or Planet of the Intelligent Hexagonal Robots, but Planet of the Mechanoids. Nope, it's Planet of Decision. Well, I suppose. I was thinking the other day, if my other half says to me, look, we've got two things to buy. We've got, there's this hose that has these attachments, but it's £5 more expensive than this hose, which has got this lovely retracting thing, but it doesn't have the attachments, and the attachments that go with that. And I just, I don't want to make the decision. You make the decision. And I always, in shops, when there was a choice between different toys, I'd feel sorry for the ones I didn't choose. I hated making that decision. So maybe Terry Nation is a bit like me. Maybe deciding is actually more terrifying to Terry Nation than robots in inhospitable environments. And actually, having mocked it last week, I'm actually coming around to this because I'm terrible at making decisions. And I, as often as I can, pass on the responsibility to other people. But I know that there's going to be more than deciding going on. I remember one of the few Doctor Who magazines. I'm just going to check that camera because it made a noise. Yeah, it did stop. How interesting. That has happened once before. But let's not worry about that. I remember there was a Doctor Who magazine, one of the... I did, because I didn't subscribe when I was younger, because I didn't have the money, but we got the odd one, or I got given one. And I remember one of the ones I had a letter in the letters page where somebody had sent in a picture of the mechanoid toy. And it was revealed that was very rare, and they were lucky to have it, and blah, blah, blah. And it looked like an absolute thing of beauty. And I do think the mechanoids are a lovely design. They're really pleased. I mean, they're massive. They're like tanks, but they're not, because they have slightly more personality than a tank. And of course, this is as Darrell, who has chosen them, his favourite thing for episode 5, which means I can't make the decision on this planet that the mechanoids are my favourite thing about it. And presumably the mechanoid toy would have looked not unlike that. You see, and I suppose, I wonder how long that hung around in Ray Cusick's drawer for, that tiny little mechanoid. And of course we can't have tiny little Doctor and Vicky and Ian and Barbara, so we assume they're behind a pillar or something. But they're funny things, and I'm not sure I anticipated how they would talk. But certainly I'm not sure I expected this slightly sort of weird communication thing that they have, which makes them actually slightly cute, which I hadn't expected. I don't know what I'd expected, but certainly what I got when I first saw them in action and in conversation was not what I'd expected when I'd seen those toys and the pictures of the mechanoids, but actually the way they move and the size they are is pretty impressive. And there's a record, there's a single that I think has episode 6 of The Chase on it and is narrated by David Graham, that I've heard a couple of times that a friend got hold of. And I'm sure, having had their name spelt wrong in the credits of episode 5, I think they're referred to as Mechons in that, in the narration of that. I don't think I'm wrong in that. And Mechons was the original name of the mechanoids before they got rechristened Mechanoids. I note that simply because it might be of interest. Oh, well, I suppose it's the same reason I say anything in these chitter chats that I do. But yeah, and a bit of beard growth there for Peter Purvis, who's changed a bit in the 3 weeks since he was Morton Dill, and because when you read about these sorts of stories, he's got a polo neck. This really is the polo neck story, isn't it? They've really gone for it as a costuming motif. So when one read about this story as a kid, it features the mechanoids, it features the debut of Stephen Taylor. You sort of naturally assumed that those things would be in it earlier than the last episode. And isn't it because Dodo also arrives in the last episode of the story that she is introduced in? And Katerina, although I don't really count Katerina as a companion for reasons we'll go into in great detail when somebody is sensible enough to choose the Mythmakers or the Dalek Master Plan. I wouldn't stop talking for you. Could do one of these conches then, Stephen Taylor. You need a bit of verbal diarrhea. Sorry, you've tuned in. You've only got yourselves to blame. He's very naturalistic. So that was what surprised me as a kid, because when I was younger, Peter Purvis was a Blue Peter presenter. I had no idea that he'd been in Doctor Who until I got the Doctor Who 20th Anniversary Radio Times special, and there's a picture of him in the Celestial Toymaker. Some glorious colour pictures of the Celestial Toymaker. And I'm sure that's Peter Purvis. And it was the revelation that Peter Purvis was a Doctor Who companion, which was a real surprise. It's... it'd be like, finding out that, I don't know, Terry Nutkins was in Blake 7 or some such. And then when I started watching the episodes that he's in, it was also a surprise that Peter Purvis, because he did crufts, didn't he? And the darts, he was a sort of he sort of metamorphosed into a sports/dog presenter. That he's a really good actor. He's very naturalistic. He's got some nice attitude. Stephen's not as grumpy as he was written up in some of the early Doctor Who literature. He is quite he's quite confrontational in this, I suppose, but he was sort of written up as temperamental astronaut Stephen Taylor, and he's not. He's actually becomes the sort of hero when Hartnell's sidelined in the third season, when John Wiles, I think, rather pettily seems to send out an edict saying, give William Hartnell increasingly less to do, and Stephen is the hero of the massacre. He has the bulk of the action in Dalek's master plan, and Purvis is more than capable. Another Dalek appendage. I love her. Now this is the Dalek spinny plate thin turd appendage. It looks less like a turd when it's not spinning round. I like that. I'd forgotten about that. And there we've got the compassy thing from earlier. I think I would happily see new Dalek appendages every week, and this week is a classic for them. I'd totally forgotten about this, whatever this one is, the inverted hat, the plate of stringy turd, whatever it is. Yeah, Barbara, you tell the mechanoid to get lost. There is something a bit sort of human zooey, isn't there? I remember an episode of The Twilight Zone, which haven't seen much of, and it was one I just stayed up late to watch as a kid, and where it was a guy, is he sort of befriended by aliens, and he's an astronaut, and then it turns out he's an exhibit in a museum or a zoo or something, and there was something about the slats there that looked like the bars of a cage. And it makes them kind of sort of exhibits for the sort of voyeurism of these rather strange staccato robot things. And that's great, isn't it? The thing in Stephen's cell, it's like for a kid, it's like a fun climbing frame. But yes, I going back to the Dalek appendages, I would. I think if I'd been around in the '60s and was trying to find new things to do with the Daleks, I'd definitely give them, a saw or a camera or a whisk. And this is okay. So this is on the roof here. I get a feeling of height because he's shooting it quite low. Oh, that's God, Ian, blimey. I buy that from the camera work and the acting that we're pretty high up with what looks like giant reels of cotton. Oh, and this is, of course, I have to build up to this because it's the end of Ian and Barbara, isn't it? Who, lest we forget, have been with us since there is as much a part of Doctor Who as the Doctor. They've been in it as long as him. In fact, we got to know them really before we got to know him because he was a mystery. We're quite comfortable with him now, and that's more comfortable than that camera was. Wow. But William Russell has done such a good job of being the pragmatic hero. He's not boring. He has a sense of fun about him. He's as cool as a school teacher was allowed to be in the 1960s, I'm sure. And he's very good at keeping the situation straightforwardly dramatic. And Jacqueline Hill is just fabulous as Barbara, and often bears the brunt of having the worst, most panicky material to deliver, but there's so much more to her than that. She's a cracking actress. And I had the pleasure of meeting her daughter, who looks just like her. You can totally see. And it turned out I was already Facebook friends with her. I don't know why. But I went and interviewed her, Jacqueline Hill's husband, Alvin Rakoff, about something else. He very kindly invited me to the home that they lived in when she was in Doctor Who. He still lives in the same place. What a beautiful home it is. And yes, and their daughter was there, and it was, and I didn't say, oh, I'm a Doctor Who fan or anything, because I was being polite and all sorts. But anyway, that was quite an amazing experience. I love what Maureen O'Brien does on the top here to suggest height. She's doing that sort of I'm slightly giddy and slightly nuts because I'm high up, and we've all done that. I mean, I've been on a bridge holding a baby, and you have that sort of weird fascination with going, well, what if I drop this baby now? Which you go, and I think that's your mind saying to you, whatever you do, don't drop the baby. But that sort of strange, sort of perverse panic thing, stroke exhilaration, stroke is really nicely done there. I think she's a really interesting actress, Maureen O'Brien, and she sometimes makes choices that look a bit odd, but that's because of the nature of the filming rather than any shortcoming of the performance, although I think Barbara's about to get garroted. But I think a lot of her quite sophisticated choices, Maureen O'Brien, would work better when you've got slightly less sort of primitive shooting methods. So she's slightly ahead of her time. But what I had totally forgotten that they almost decapitate Barbara Wright, and now Ian's trying not to pull her trousers down. What an undignified moment for Jacqueline Hill, who I'd just been eulogising moments before. She nearly gets her head chopped off and then nearly gets her trousers pulled down. Crikey, that went all out for ungainly realism. I think you'd have done that again. Anyway, and now we're going into so that was a model. But now we go into the film sequence, which they could have saved a little bit of leftover for to do the fight with the robot Doctor Who. But I remember reading in Doctor Who: A Celebration, the final sequence, the battle between the Daleks and the Mechanoids. Richard Martin, who was a gifted film director, excelled here, and Richard Martin really does go to town when he's on film, and this is obviously a showpiece sequence. Oh, look at that! I love the flamethrowers, but of course by this time the Mechanoids, I think, have been deemed too ungainly to ever appear in Doctor Who again, which is a shame, because this is glorious stuff, isn't it? And there's inlays and there's smoke and there's explosions, and God, they look great surrounding the Dalek. They sort of dwarf the Dalek, which is marvellous. Oh, and look at the flames, and that was a bit of animation there, wasn't there? A bit of whatever that flash is. There's all sorts of techniques going on here to sort of go. You're at the end of, come on, we've had Abraham Lincoln and Dracula and Frankenstein and the Mary Celeste, etc., etc. And now this is the end of this epic, chase through time and space. We've got a sense of occasion about this, and that was pretty. That's the sort of stuff that as a kid you'd be, reimagining and drawing pictures of and all sorts of things. And the smoke's there to suggest, come on, we got to get out of here, because, we're in a dangerous spot, and things are getting worse because all hell's breaking loose. Good action, well done, William Russell. I'd forgotten you. That's actually quite a way down you've gone there, and there's actually bits of flame falling down. Then I'm not sure they were entirely necessary. All of this smoke and these explosions, that's actually just a bit of stock footage, isn't it, with the model superimposed over it? But I totally buy that. That works for me. It's slightly abstract, but I like it. It works. Real sense of scale going on there. Okay, we're doing this. So the Daleks have been destroyed by the Mechanoids. And is Ian's checking out the TARDIS. It's never referred to as the... Now, Ian, you've been a bit glib. It's like, I'm nearly out of here. It's not referred to as a TARDIS on screen. So it's just the Dalek time machine, and the Daleks have all been blown up. And there's a sort of end of term feel, but I have a really heavy heart, because I remember when I watched this as part of Running Through Corridors that I did with Rob Shearman, which was the last time I saw this. It was at the end of watching all of William Russell and Jacqueline Hill's episodes in order, and they're a really important part of Doctor Who. And the fact that they stayed beyond that first year, beyond Susan's departure, which you'd think would be the one that the Doctor really couldn't cope with because she was his granddaughter, and it weathered that storm. But it sort of solidified their place as, really vital parts of Doctor Who. Yes, hello, Stephen. I mean, bad-tempered maybe, but stupid enough to go back for a toy panda. Yeah, you swear at the... That's brilliant. I'd forgotten he did that. He's just looked at his panda as if to say, "Oh, you made me go back for you stupid stuffed git." Oh, and this is because Hartnell... Oh, I want to sit in a pub and drink a... And this is interesting, isn't it? Because it recaptures that original butting of heads that this relationship was all about. But this is so sad because we know it's actually because they're all actually upset at the prospect, and when we're upset and we don't want to confront our emotions, we say things we perhaps don't mean, and we shout at people that we care about. So this is all very real. And I know that I mean, Jacqueline Hill comes back because she's in Meglos, but this is the last time we see Ian and Barbara, and the show has gone on for another 50 odd years without them. But I mean, Ian, but they're still out there somewhere. In London, 1965. Hartnell's really good in this, and it proves the importance of Vicky's character, because she's the young innocent one, but actually is the wisest one in this situation, and she uses that to make the Doctor do the right thing. And he knows really that the dynamic here between everyone is excellent. And I find it desperately sad, because I care about the people that are in Doctor Who, the actors and the characters, because they're a big part of my life. And this is a big one, because they're leaving Hartnell as the last remaining original cast member, and you sort of know as well what it will have done to him. Got a 50-50 chance. That's not much of a goodbye, is it? Yeah, I'll send you, but you might die. And we don't actually... That's the last time we see them together, isn't it? We don't see them say goodbye, which I think is probably more than I could bear. And actually, what is unsaid is probably more effective. Oh, I find this heartbreaking. I really do. I'm a silly old fusspot. I think that's what he's about to call them, isn't he? Oh God, yeah. And actually, they don't say anything. And now here we are on film, and they've landed in a shed, so we don't have to see the Dalek spaceship. 1965. So you've actually been gone as long as you. It was interesting that they decided to return them to sort of now, as it were, when the episode is being shown. And of course, then said let's return you to when you disappeared. So they'll have lots of explaining to do. I don't know how they're going to explain where they've been for 2 years and what happened to one of their school pupils, but they'll wonder where he is. It was fun, and you were great. And this is weird. You don't have this. I remember there's an episode of Doomwatch where a lot of it is done by sort of still photographs. Which, I mean, is just a stylistic thing that I say you wouldn't do now, but I'm sure there are examples where perhaps you have. That's great. They see the police box. But I wonder why they did it as photos. But it's very sweet. And wasn't, I think some of this was directed by Douglas Camfield, wasn't it? I don't know why I think that, but I think it was because I think he cast Derek Ware as the bus conductor, who is I think not credited in this, is it? But it's Derek who was a stuntman, rather trained actor, but stuntman. Founded Havoc, great servant to Doctor Who. He'd been in Caveman Double in the very first story, doubling Cal or Zar. They made it. Oh, and you can see it on the Space Time Telegraph. So that's nice that it brings that back into, having had it as a bit of padding for the first episode. God, he's so good. Yeah, I feel it. Oh, I'm really upset. Silly old fusspots. That's really nicely done. We're off. I think that's really nicely done, and I love William Russell and Jacqueline Hill. I thank them for being my friends in Doctor Who, and I'm really sad to see them go. And I'm not ashamed of that. And there was no artifice in that at all. That's I care about the people in Doctor Who because they've been a big part of my life. And of course, I can see Ian and Barbara whenever I want, but there is something about the fact that this is the end of their journey, and we don't need anything as cheap as a cliffhanger into the next story. I think that would undermine the import of what has just happened, which is we've just lost, our last, Mechanoid spelt correctly this time, our last connection with, bar the Doctor with Doctor Who when it started. I love that. I do find that I think they got a lot of companions get bad, hurried send-offs or send-offs that are a victim of circumstance. I think that's perfect. And I think they're perfect. And I'm very sad that Jacqueline Hill died so comparatively young. She's so good. They're both really good. I think they're both really good. And I love those characters because they just pitch it. They just pitch it right. Okay. Well, obviously my favourite thing of episode 6 is the perfectly handled departure of Ian and Barbara. And my favourite thing overall is a slightly trickier, especially as Darrell has, I think, already chosen my what I take away mostly from this is the sort of chutzpah of going, right, this is a shopping list of really exciting comic book stuff if you're a 10-year-old child in 1965. Well, I think I can say, having chosen, I think that film sequence of the Daleks fighting the Mechanoids, is a step above the rest of the production. It's where they've clearly thrown a lot of money and time, and is a showpiece moment that rewards 6 weeks of the odd planets of derision. So yeah, I'll take the film sequence of the Daleks versus the Mechanoids. So they're both things from episode 6, although one of them is a bonus thing. It's the freshest in my mind. And I have to take the departure of Ian and Barbara, which they judge very well, but also that's an acknowledgement for not just the fact that they departed, but of their huge contribution to the previous, however many episodes of Doctor Who they were in. What has Darrell chosen?
So, reason number 6. I can count. It's Ian and Barbara's leaving scene now. Ian and Barbara's leaving scene is really unusual in 60s Doctor Who, as it People point to things like Survival as pointing the way to the new series in the Russell T Davies era, but that scene at the end of The Chase with Ian and Barbara leaving is so much like the Rose world in the first couple of new series runs. It really feels like the present day. I know they tried it a few times in Doctor Who, present day things, even like the War Machines and a few times in the Colour era, but nothing like how real that London feels. And then you get the photo montage, and there's something genuinely emotional and genuinely heartfelt about those last 2 minutes of The Chase. And it really caps off this mad 6 episodes of utter chaos with this really heart-rending scene. And you're saying goodbye to, there's only one regular remaining after this story. It's only the Doctor. All the companions have gone now. Susan's left. Ian and Barbara have left. And it's really is that moment. You can see it echoed at the end of The Green Death and Hand of Fear. But that scene is really nice and kind of beyond compare. It's really nice we have that. And even if you can't stand anything that goes on in The Chase and you think it's a mess, that scene's got to touch you somewhere. And if it doesn't, you're one of these. Reason number 7. Reason number 7 is the Beatles bit in episode 1. Now, I'm fickle, but the fact is, even if you hate The Chase, it is the only place to see the Beatles on Top of the Pops. Now, if you were a not-wee, thinking about what's the most 1960s piece of footage you could possibly find, you go, maybe a clip of the Beatles on Top of the Pops. But you can't see it except in The Chase. All the Beatles appearances on Top of the Pops are lost, except the clip that is in The Chase. And it doesn't turn up in any Beatles documentaries or anything else. That bit of the Beatles singing Ticket to Ride on Top of the Pops in The Chase is an exclusive, except in America. And that is the only place you can see it. So, archivally, for people that hate Doctor Who and love the Beatles, The Chase is the one story they would rescue from a burning building. And that's got to have something going for it. I don't know why there would be a burning building with all the Doctor Who stories in and someone only gets one go, but that's the rules of this fictional situation. And maybe The Chase is what I'd rescue as well. So, Beatle fans, that is another reason why The Chase is perfect. And we should treasure it forever. Honestly. Rock on!
Well, thank you to Darrell for going to such an effort to put together such an entertaining video, but also that's really interesting because I think I mentioned at some point, yes, the Empire State Building's probably present day, and then we have the War Machines and and then we have Planet of Giants, which are the things in the present day before the War Machines, which generally people say is the first present day story. Totally discounted, of course, the fact that Ian and Barbara's return is the present day. That's the whole point of it, is that they, the 2 years that we spend with them, they actually do spend away in their own journey. That they have aged as much as they would have done had they stayed on Earth. And that is contemporary. And then I didn't know that about the Beatles and the Top of the Pops thing, because I'm not a music aficionado at all, that is an archival treat, and that's the only Beatles on Top of the Pops. That's extraordinary. Well done, Doctor. I hope somewhere in the Beatles archive are the only copies of the Daleks Master Plan episodes that are missing. Now, Darrell has he sent me a third file. He broke his response files up into 2 sets of 3 episodes, but he says he sent me a third one. I have no idea what this is. Every guest has responded to my request in their own way, which has been an unexpected pleasure, an unexpected bonus of this. So what Darrell is gonna top this off with, I've got no idea. So let's have a look.
So, thank you for listening to my choices. I hope you don't judge me too harshly for my choice of story. I've got a few things on the boil. Can't talk about them all, but there is an audio drama called The Barren Author, Barren Author, which stars Richard O'Brien and Sophie Aldred, and, unbelievably, in one episode, me. And that's available as a download. It should be available by the time this goes out. Search for The Barren Author. It's from Spiteful Puppet. Search for them, you'll find it. Hopefully some other stuff to announce soon. But until then, thank you for listening, and goodbye. Oh, And one more thing. I said before that I love The Chase because it's a bit like a light entertainment show. And I do. But how else do you finish a light entertainment show? With a song.
They're bringing Daleks in by the lorry. They caused them marry Celeste, but they're sorry. They're shooting day for night in a quarry. That's called a radius. A radius. The latest robots have been putting some fat on, whilst Peter Purvis put an amusing hat on. Barbara and Ian went and passed down the baton. So sad to be rid of yous. I just wanted you to know that of all the stories I could have had, I paid me money and took The Chase. I know the casters can't glide over rubble. That haunted house is frankly asking for trouble. And I'll admit that Billy's uncanny double could be more uncannier. But stuff your cities of deaths and your kinders, and shop Inferno and blink up for Tinders. I wanna float around just like burnt cinders in Viva Hispania. Cause you know we all say, let's all go back to 1965. We'll feed the pigeons and hope it never ends. Because what's 2 years among friends when he sends us back home? Let's all go back to 1965. We never ever want to go back inside. All we can say is, well, thanks for the ride.
Full of actual sketches, like review sketches. There's, the Shakespeare one, and the things they go to later on, like the like this. The hands sketch.
Oh, do you know what? I'm very touched by that as well, because he's done that for this. Somebody I don't know, never met, and in fact I only started following him on Twitter during lockdown because he kept putting up these songs of people retweeting them of him singing, doing famous singers singing, or TV themes done in the style of famous singers, and he tickled me and I thought he was brilliant, so I started following him. And then he started following me for some reason. I don't know why. Something had happened that sort of meant I hit his radar. And so I just sent him a thing. He was obviously a Doctor Who fan and said, would you do this? And he's sort of gone above and beyond the Call of Duty. He's done a song with coloured pictures and everything. And isn't that a testament to what we do best as Doctor Who fans is that it inspires us creatively in different ways. And I'm constantly amazed at how clever and inventive and joyous people can be. And that's a tonic. And that plays against sometimes at the end of a day when you're flicking through social media and it just seems that everybody's being a bit of a git to each other. Actually, we fixate upon the half emptiness of the glass because we're almost trained to expect that. I adored the way that Darrell, as I say, kindness of strangers, responded to a request from somebody he's never met with such invention and such wit. Check out his Twitter feed, which has those things that first drew him to my attention. I'll put his Twitter feed on the screen. And with real thanks to Darrell for going above and beyond the Call of Duty for this. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I've got to be honest with you, I've never liked The Chase. I tried to be nice about it through running through corridors, but actually, to write a couple of paragraphs per episode is pretty easy to do. 150 to 200 words per episode, you can kind of get away with it. I've had to talk for 2.5 hours. I hope at least some of it's been entertaining. But I've gone into this to have somebody inspire a positive vibe about anything. I thought everybody would be choosing Blink and Genesis of the Daleks. People are going, Time Flight, The Chase. But I found this really invigorating to go to something I've been furious with in the past. I used to get so cross with it. I gleefully score it 2 out of 10. I sort of, as I say, through the prism of Darrell's celebration of it and the way that he couches it in a different way to how, I would have done as the angry teenager who first saw it. And I had a riot with that. It's not always great, but it's always... And I think Terry Nation can be a bit glib sometimes, and I think he can also be a bit... It's almost like he doesn't care that he's giving them things that they can't pull off because that's way down the line from him. But nonetheless, it makes for this sort of heady mishmash that is quite unlike anything. You wouldn't do it now. You wouldn't get away with it now. Of pitching something so tonally all over the place, and also often so beyond the bounds of what is possible to do with the resources that you have. And they just go, we can do it anyway. So if nothing else, thank you for being with me as I learn to stop worrying and love the chase. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to Happy Times and Places with me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest, Darrell Maclaine, who can be found on Twitter at MacLockdown. I'd also like to thank this episode's featured patrons, who are Ruben Herfindahl, Rob Leonard, Stephen Moffat, not that one, Richard Straw, Jenny at Bluebox99, Paul Cook, Rob Dawson, John Deere, Chris Dunford-Kelk, Siobhan Galichon, Ian Key, Joe Llewellyn, Darren Mackay, Jeff Kaplan, Andy Kitching, Hendrik Korzeniowski, Nate Lynch, Sean McAllister, Pip Madeley, Nick Mellish, Russell Parker, Ken Patterson, Thomas Payne, Quarridors, Gavin Rymil, Tom Zielinski, Jim Sankster, Paul Shields, Richard Smith, David Spencer, Dave Stevens, Adam Stone, Paul Taylor-Greaves, Sidney Trote, John Turner, Gary Wales, and Alistair Wallace. The music for this podcast is by Dave Gates. If you would like to financially support these podcasts, you can do so by becoming a Patreon. You get advanced and exclusive material at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, or you can do a one-off payment at kofi.com/Toby Hadoke. And if you can't do either of those things, and I understand in these trying times that might not be possible, you are nonetheless still welcome. Please rate 5 stars if you can, and review these at all your podcast outlets, and spread the word. Thank you so much. More information at www.tobyhadoke.com, and check out my weekly comedy show Excess Malarkey at twitch.tv/Excess Malarkey. That's the letter X, the letter S, and then Malarkey. Every week there are 4 international stand-up comedians doing their bit, and probably a bit more swearing and somewhat less Doctor Who than this podcast, but it is nonetheless still very entertaining and good value.